Welcome back everyone. Today we have a special video, and it's special why? Because it's not centered in one game only, but mostly a list of my favorite games. I'll be talking about how I came upon these games and what do I think of them. The list is not in order for the simple reason that I couldn't categorize any game as my number one. All of them had a special part in my life and all of them grew up with me, to say the least. But one of the games in this list is gonna be my all-time favorite. And I'm talking about Legacy of Kain, Soul Reaver, developed by Crystal Dynamics and published by Eidos Interactive, released in 1999. Before I talk a bit about the game, let me just say that 1998 and 1999 were huge years for gaming. Many of the franchises that are considered staples of the industry were released back in these 2 years. So we have Resident Evil 2, Medieval, Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time, Metal Gear Solid, Spyro the Dragon, Wipeout, Banjo-Kazooie, Tekken 3. So these were only a few games that were released and are still remembered quite fondly today. But one of them struck a chord with me more than anything else. And that game, as I said, was Legacy of Kain, Soul Reaver. Soul Reaver was developed by Crystal Dynamics, as I said, and it was the creation of Amy Hennig, which would later become more famous with Uncharted. From the first cutscene, with the voices of Michael Bell as Raziel and Simon Templeman as Kain, and the now late Tony J, the game struck me as something I've never seen before. Here we have a game with an amazing voice acting, and the story was, as I remember, quite adult for the time. It dealt with vampires and accepting your destiny, and this was everything. Remember, we are in 1998, 1999, so back then most of games history and lore could be written in 2 sentences in the page. Go here, shoot that, and come back. So Soul Reaver took all of that and said, no, we can actually do a game that looks and feels like a movie, and that's what Amy Hennig and her team did. So how do I came across Soul Reaver? I came across Soul Reaver when I was with a friend of mine. We were very young back then, but we were in a store, a computer store, that used to fix computers, and the guy in the store was actually playing the game, and it amazed me. I could understand nothing of what was going on, mind you, but I really enjoyed the game. So I didn't have a console or a PC to play it, and even if I had back then, I wouldn't be able to play it. I was very young. This was 1999, 2000. By the time the iFile 65 Bloom came out, so I couldn't play it, but I remember obsessing over a game for quite a bit. I used to draw Raziel anytime I had the chance. I used to read about the game in those PlayStation magazines that had the demos back then. Those things don't exist anymore, unfortunately, but they were good magazines. You could read about the new coming games and about old games as well. It had a section that was very helpful. This was for the sheets in games or ints, because back then internet was not accessible to everyone. It was a very expensive thing, so sheets and ints wouldn't come easily. If you were stuck in a game, you would probably stay stuck until you were able to solve that puzzle. And even though I couldn't play it, the game got stuck in my head for many years. And one day, me and my brother, we are in the store, gaming store. Back then was more common than it is today for some reason. Gaming stores used to be everywhere. So we were in the store and he asked me to pick any game that I wanted. It was my birthday. To pick any game that I wanted, and I knew exactly what game I wanted, so I picked Soul Reaver. For the first time in years, I was going to be able to finally play the game and see what it was all the rook was about. The magazines used to speak a lot about Soul Reaver and the dialogue and the gothic setting and the history of the game. So I decided, well, I'm gonna choose this game, and I didn't regret. Only problem was that for reasons I won't be able to disclose, because it's a very personal thing. When I got home, the PlayStation was not home anymore. So I had this game I wouldn't be able to play. Well, it was a nice box though. And I had this game that I wouldn't be able to play for around 2 to 3 years until my brother acquired a new PlayStation, and finally I beat Soul Reaver, and I beat it one go, just in case the PlayStation won't disappear this time as well. 100%. I remember catching everything in the game. Every glyph, every secret, every nook and cranny. I explored everything about the game, and until today, I still do the same. Unfortunately, Soul Reaver seems to have been forgotten by now. Crystal Dynamics only a few months ago released an inquiry asking fans what they would like to see in a new Legacy of Kain game, but nothing else was said about it, so I'm pretty sure that I won't be able to see a remaster or continuation of the game while I'm still alive. That doesn't keep me from hoping though. If you want to know more about Soul Reaver and its world, an amazing YouTuber called Raina, I'll leave the link in the description so you guys can check. He is what I would call Soul Reaver's #1 fan. He deals mostly with lost content in the game, things that were deleted, secrets that were hard to find. So go and check him out. It's a really good website. Been subscribed to Raina since years ago actually, and I don't regret it. It's really informative. It's content for fans of the game or newcomers. And that's what I have to say about Soul Reaver. There would be way more I could tell you about the game and my experience with it, but I prefer to leave you guys with the opening scene of the game so you can see why I found it so amazing the first time I saw it. I hope you enjoyed the opening scene as much as I did, and there you go. This is my favorite game, will always be my #1 game, and enjoy the opening, and with this, on to the next one.
Kain is deified. The clans tell tales of him. Few know the truth. He was mortal once, as were we all. However, his contempt for humanity drove him to create me and my brethren. I am Raziel, firstborn of his lieutenants. I stood with Kain and my brethren at the dawn of the Empire. I have served him a millennium. Over time, we became less human and more divine. Kain would enter the state of change and emerge with a new gift. Some years after the Master, our evolution would follow, until I had the honor of surpassing my lord. For my transgression, I earned a new kind of reward. Agony. There was only one possible outcome. My eternal damnation. I, Raziel, was to suffer the fate of traitors and weaklings, to burn forever in the bowels of the Lake of the Dead. Cast him in. Tumbling, burning with white-hot fire, I plunged into the depths of the abyss. Unspeakable pain, relentless agony. Time ceased to exist. Only this torture and a deepening hatred of the hypocrisy that damned me to this hell. eternity passed, and my torment receded, bringing me back from the precipice of madness. The descent had destroyed me, and yet I lived.
Before continuing to the next game, I would like you to listen to something that has been stuck in my head for a few years, and some of you will recognize it straight away, others won't, but I would like you to listen to this. So these few seconds have been stuck in my head for longer than I can recall. To be honest, it was the first thing that caught my attention in the game. Some of you already know we are talking about Metal Gear Solid. But many of you won't know that this song actually belonged to another game developed by Hideo Kojima. And the game was Police Notes that was released 4 years prior to Metal Gear. So I would like you to listen to the original song. Here it goes. There is no way of listening to this song without thinking about series like Knight Rider, Miami Vice, the A-Team. It instantly pulls you back to those 80s, 90s series that most of us grew up with. If you haven't grown up with this, it doesn't matter. You will instantly recognize it and think about it. That's why it has been stuck in my head for so long. So, back to Metal Gear Solid, Hideo Kojima's magnus opus. I saw Metal Gear again in a friend's house. Mind you, there's a reason why I used to see all these games in friends' houses, because back when I was young, consoles were rather expensive. I think they are today as well, but back then things were a bit different. Console would set you back quite a lot of money, so not everyone was keen to buy one straight away. So I acquired mine a long time after it was released, and once again this was my brother. He gave me the PlayStation 1. Back in this time, it was already the PlayStation, how was it called? Slim, I remember. It was a slimmer version of the PlayStation 1. At first sight, you would be forgiven to believe that Metal Gear was one of the first CGI movies ever done. One look at the game and you would think that this is more of a movie than a game. And in truth, the reality wasn't far off from it. Metal Gear had huge amounts of full motion video. Back then, these were the cutscenes in a game, and Metal Gear Solid had those in spades. I remember that Metal Gear Solid 3 was not called Solid anymore, was Snake Eater. Had around 3 hours of full motion videos that in some regards is more than many movies, and this game was the closest you could get to an interactive movie. It brought a lot of innovations into the gaming world, and it showed the world that games could be far more than a weekend entertainment or a child's entertainment. It was an adult story, an adult setting, and an adult game. I remember finishing Metal Gear in one afternoon, if I recall. My memory is a bit fuzzy at the moment. It's one of the perks of getting old. But I remember finishing it in 5.5 hours, something like that. Mind you, back then this was quite an enterprise, especially because I was very young, and some of the scenes and characters got stuck with me for a very long time, as I'm pretty sure that they got stuck with everyone who played the game back then. Who doesn't remember seeing Psycho Mantis for the first time? It was something so alien from games that couldn't comprehend it. We had Resident Evil, it's true, with their zombies, but Psycho Mantis was something else, far different. Then it was a threat that you couldn't see, a threat that you couldn't stop so easily. And this, of course, if you don't know the tricks to beat Psycho Mantis the first time, which would be something for another video. And let's not forget the lore behind the story of the game itself. Honestly, after so many years, I have to admit that I cannot understand much of the lore myself. There's so many games, there's in so many different consoles, and I played all of them. That would be nearly impossible to track all of its history. I know that there are huge robots, there are clones, there are some fringe technology in the mixture, but that's mostly it. It's a very complicated story, one that if you had to put into a movie would probably be better doing it as a series. Remind you that, as I said, one of the games has 3 hours of full motion video. That is far more time than many movies around. Needless to say, this big epic game movie did struck a chord with me, and I think all over the years I finished it around 7 times by now. So it's very hard to talk about Metal Gear without bordering the fanboy mindset or the adoration mindset. Truth be told, it's a game that brought so much to the industry that I don't think something else would be acceptable. The game does deserve to be in everyone's list of favorite games, because if it wasn't for Metal Gear, many of the now staples of the gaming industry that exist today wouldn't be around. Metal Gear changed the world in a way that no one was expecting it. It was in every magazine, in everyone's mouth. Everyone and their grandmothers covered the game back then. So Metal Gear is and always will be on my list of favorite games. And with that said, on to the next one.
Ugh, kinda damn cold. I hate Alaska. Boy, oh boy, that woman is built all right.
Now we have what I consider to be one of the best stealth games of all time, and it's called Tenchu. So Tenchu was first released in 1998 and was developed by Acquire, but the one I'm talking about is Tenchu 2, released 2 years later in 2000 and also developed by Acquire, with later installments being developed by the now famous From Software. So most people would consider Metal Gear Solid Solid to be one of the first 3D stealth games, but in reality, Tenchu was released on February 1998, while Metal Gear Solid was released September 1998. So Tenchu, it's a few months older than Metal Gear, so in reality they were developed mostly at the same time. So this actually would make Tenchu and Metal Gear nearly the same age, being Tenchu a bit younger, but just by a couple of months. Fortunately, I don't know when one started development and the other, but that's something that I'm not going too deep in this video. So Tenchu, I first played Tenchu, the second one, not the first one, because of my brother. My brother was a very big player, so he used to love games, and he was the one who put that bug in me. My brother, as I was saying, was a very big fan of games. I remember my brother playing Time Co-op and Tenchu, Mortal Kombat. So he introduced me to Tenchu back in the days, and I was in love with Tenchu straight away. I've seen Tenchu first, and I've seen Metal Gear. So, but to me, although these two games, they are very close range, so most people tend to compare them. To me, I found Tenchu with a different kinds of stealth, was more based in reality. Later on, the game would introduce some form of magic and mystical arts, but the first and the second game, they were very based in reality, that they would show you what a ninja would have to do to accomplish his mission. Was less action based and more infiltrating, more being aware of your surroundings than, for instance, Metal Gear. But as I said, these two franchises cannot be compared. Metal Gear is more of a sci-fi thing, while Tenchu is, as I said, more of a feudal Japan thing, which to me was quite amazing. I always had a fascination with ninjas, and I used to read a lot about them and how they came to be and why they came to be. So this to me was, I was in heaven actually. Funny thing is, Tenchu 3 would be called Wrath of Heaven. Just a little joke. So Tenchu, I didn't play the game much, unfortunately, due to family problems. I wasn't allowed to play the game much, but it stuck with me for many years, the little that I've played, and it actually took me many years to find the game again. This, back then, buying a game wasn't as easy as it is today. While you have dozens of digital stores, back then you really had to wait for a physical release, or you had to wait that it would come back in stock, and I did wait. I wait a long time, more than I want to recall now. And every time, every couple of months, I used to go to the gaming store and ask them if they had Tenchu available already. Only when I was already quite old, I did found the copy, and I bought it. So, and I played it. So this was already back when the PlayStation 3 was around. So imagine how long it took to find the copy of Tenchu 2. It seems funny, this story, as it seems amazing, but you have to remember that back then, as I said, the possibility of just going to a website and buying a game was not exactly something that we would think of. Even emulation back then was just starting their first step, so it's very finicky. Either you had a good PC to play even PlayStation 1 games, or either you didn't have, and I didn't have a PC for a long time, so I had to rely on stores to bring the game to me. And I remember that it did cost me a fortune. It cost me double or triple that I paid for it, because it was already considered a rare game. Again, remember that this is the pre-digital era, so any game that you couldn't find laying around in a store was already considered a rarity. So Tenchu is going to be always on my list of favorite games, and still is, and I played it even today. Like most of the games in this list are games that I still play and I still love, and from time to time I like to come back to them. So that is it about Tenchu, and with that said, on to the next one. So next up we have Urban Chaos, released in 1999 on PlayStation 1, Microsoft, Windows. So This was published by Idols Interactive. What was Urban Chaos? Urban Chaos was an open world action game. The first time I saw the game, I think, was around the same date that it was released, 1999 or 2000. There is a funny thing about Urban Chaos, since I always associated with Linkin Park. Back then, Linkin Park were already famous since 1996, but this was the first time that I heard Linkin Park as well. So, to me, every time I remember the game, I remember their song. The song is called In the Ends. This is the song that made Linkin Park really jump into the scene.
What it meant to be will eventually be a memory of a time I tried so hard and got so far, but in the end, it doesn't even matter. I had to fall to lose it all, but in the end, it doesn't even matter.
So Urban Chaos, the funny thing about Urban Chaos is when the first time I saw it, it was in a friend's house. We were playing and she decided, I have this game in here, I haven't played much, so would you like to see it? I said, yeah, show me the game. And by the moment that I started playing the game, I was flabbergasted. Never seen nothing like that. So, mind you, open world games were not so big back then, were not the thing that was so common back then as it is today, where everything needs to be open world, unfortunately. But back then was a few games had this idea of just release the player and let him play as he wants. I remember Shenmue, I have very fond memories of Shenmue as well. GTA, first and the second, with the top-down view. I have to admit I was not very keen on GTA, especially because I couldn't understand much of what was going on with the top-down view. But as I said, back then it was not a common trend to see games with open environments. And the Urban Chaos struck me straight away because you could go to a bar, you could parkour into buildings, you could rappel from one building to the other. This was something that was unheard of to me. And one thing that struck me, and today it's a very common thing, but back then wasn't that common, is the fact that there was a police officer, a black police officer, as the main character. And mind you, this to me was amazing. It's something that struck me as quite unique, and today is very common. We have a huge variety of characters and a huge variety of nations portrayed in games, but back then were mostly white people in the game. So just remember Silent Hill, Resident Evil, Tomb Raider, and here it is, this game, that had a main character that was a strong female black woman, and I really enjoyed it back then. So this was created by Muckyfoot, and Muckyfoot, the last game that they created was Blade 2, and this was a very long time ago, if I recall, 2001, 2000. And since then they closed down their offices. English-based developer, and since then they closed down their offices. They had the Urban Chaos 2 in development, but because I think the office is bankrupt, so they decided that they would cancel it as well. I always wanted to see what could they have done with new technology, and so what would they bring to the table now that we had other games, because mind you, this was being made in 2001, 2002. So Urban Chaos would be released in another graphic engine with probably a bigger city, more things to do. That would be quite awesome to see. We have another one that always confuses people, which is Urban Chaos Riot Response, if I'm not mistaken, that's the name. And has nothing to do with this game. I played it on Dreamcast, which is the best way to play it. On computer nowadays, due to the game being so old, barely runs. But let's face it, the reason is because the Dreamcast version, amazing as it sounds, it's better than any other version that came out. PlayStation 1 was the first version that I played. Since then I bought it for Dreamcast, and for Windows I actually own it on Valve and on Steam. But that's the version that I would advise you to play if you want to try Urban Chaos. So the list doesn't have a specific order, but I would count Urban Chaos as my third favorite game. So that's on to the next one. And lastly, but certainly not least, we have Silent Hill. Now, Silent Hill, it's a funny thing to put on a list actually. Most people will consider Silent Hill one of their top favorite games. The way I came across Silent Hill was also, again, through friends. He had this game in his house, but he was afraid to play it by himself. So he asked my help. Mind you, I never played a game until then, a horror game to say the least. I think I played Resident Evil 2 or 3, something like that. But Resident Evil 2 and 3 were not something that I myself considered a horror game. At least not something that you would lose your sleep with. You had zombies, but you had a lot of guns to defend yourself as well. So I started playing Silent Hill, and from the opening song until the opening sequence, again I was taken by surprise. Now here was a game where you were not a fighter, but a regular Joe, just trying to save his daughter from evil he couldn't fight or understand. And this I found that was very akin to reality most of the times. You won't be able to fight against it. And this is the harsh reality of life. And this game was the same. Unbeatable odds of fighting something you couldn't see and you couldn't understand. Best chance that Harry had in here was to survive. They called Resident Evil survival horror for the fact that you had to look out for your ammo and not shoot everything on sight. But I myself, I did consider Silent Hill survival horror. This guy was not a fighter. He was not someone who was even remotely prepared to fight this kind of thing. But he went because he had his daughter in the story, so he had to do everything in his power to save his family. So I played the game in a friend's house, and there was something in the game that struck me quite quickly. The English back then, as we all know, was not as well translated as it is now. So some of the puzzles were very mind-blowing. I remember, as most of you will remember, the piano puzzle. I remember getting stuck in that part, me and my friend, for, I don't know, a couple of months, I recall, because we couldn't understand what's going on. We asked, given a teacher, a music teacher, we asked for help, but he couldn't understand it neither. The puzzle was very hard to figure it out. So one day we are playing outside, me and my friends, and he comes with a PlayStation magazine that had the solution to the puzzle. You cannot imagine how happy we were with it. Finally, we were going to be able to see the rest of the game. Barely we know that the hospital part would still come, but the hospital puzzle was still easier than the piano, I'm honest. Despite that it was not as easy as we thought it would be, we still managed to finish the puzzle without support. It just took us a bit longer, not months this time, but a few days only to finish the game. So back to Silent Hill. After so many movies, so many comic books, so many books, there isn't much that one can say about Silent Hill. The lore is very complex. It has a huge story. At first sight, it will look like a simple horror game where you go to this city that is haunted, or it's a gateway to hell, but there is much more than that. Fortunately, something that most of the movies, or the second movie, unfortunately, didn't manage to capture. Silent Hill is much, much more than the city itself. It's the people who stumble upon it. Comics are very good at explaining the lore of it, and it makes the story a bit more understandable. So, as I said, Silent Hill was indeed my first horror game, and I actually thought that we're never going to see a new Silent Hill, but Silent Hill 2 was announced just now, and they got me very excited. I hope you guys are excited about it as well as I am, because I thought that I wouldn't be able to see it in my lifetime. With that said, Silent Hill here on the list is the last game, but I don't think that it's actually the last my favorite games. It's not. The list, as I said, is not in order, because I couldn't figure out a way of deciding which was my favorite game. So Reaver is in first, and I explained why. The rest of the games, they are all something that I grew up with, that I still carry around, that I still play over and over again, that don't get tired of revisiting. That is a feeling that doesn't come easy on today's games. You have this whole replayability and this huge sprawling open world games, but is it that these games back then that were so open, but they were so narrative focused, was it that they managed to have a replayability than many open world games today? Something that I will never understand. With this, I would like to finish my list. I had some fun doing it and remembering some things about games I used to play and I usually do. If you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to click the like button. If this list has decent views, I will do another one. If you guys enjoy it, press the like button. If you're not subscribed now, it's a good time, and good luck. I'll see you next time.